I want to preface this video by stating that I do not bear any hatred or even ill will towards Asmon. The purpose of this video is merely to correct incorrect information that I've heard him bring up on a few occasions. I'd also like to acknowledge that the points that I'm addressing in this video are not the main point of the video I'm taking them from. Really, they're used as offhand examples. However, falsehoods are still falsehoods, and as he's brought them up on multiple occasions, I think it's worth addressing. Let's start with a clip of what Asmon says, and then I'll explain why he's incorrect. And of course, I'll link to the video I've taken this from below, as well as the other resources I've used for this video.
You can't explain to somebody who believes the Bible that stars being this old is like a proof that the Earth isn't 6,000 years old. You can't do that. It's not the way the world works.
All right. So Asmon believes that the fact that we can see stars proves that the Bible is not true. He's certainly not the only person I've heard state this frankly moronic opinion, as I've also heard Matt Walsh say it. The idea is that if the Earth were young, as Bible-believing young Earth creationists believe, we shouldn't be able to see any stars because it would take far longer than 6,000 years for their light to reach us. The problem with this argument is that it addresses one single aspect of a worldview while ignoring the whole. If we assume that the Earth was indeed 6,000 years old but had come into existence by natural processes, then yes, being able to see the star's light would indeed be a proof against it. But that's not the argument. If you're going to address a worldview held by myself and many others, then I'd ask that you would take into account the entire worldview, as it's intellectually dishonest to do anything else. Our view is not that the Earth and the rest of reality came into being by natural causes, but rather that an all-powerful God, a being who exists outside the bounds of our reality, created it from nothing. And a God who created everything from nothing would certainly have no issue in creating the stars with their light already shining on Earth. Whether or not you believe in creation is one thing, but hopefully you can see that this particular gotcha argument is quite stupid, and perhaps now you can stop using it because, quite frankly, it makes you look incredibly ignorant. Speaking of ignorance, he then brings up radiocarbon dating.
You can be a Christian and know the universe isn't 6,000 years old. Well, the person who thinks that it is 6,000 years old is not going to be convinced by, you explaining carbon dating to them. That's the point that I'm making.
Funny thing about radiocarbon dating is that to think that it proves anything with its current implementation, you either have to be ignorant or incredibly dishonest. Now, I'm going to assume ignorance in this case, because back when he was in school, I don't know exactly how many years ago, this was taught as a method of how to date how old things were, such as fossils and what have you, but the flaws with it were not taught. So let's begin with an explanation. Radiocarbon dating works by measuring how much carbon-14 is in something. All living things take in carbon-14 when they're alive. Then when they die, they stop taking in additional carbon-14, and the carbon-14 they have begins to decay. It has a half-life, which means that after a certain period of time, 5,730-ish years in the case of carbon-14, you will be left with half the amount that you had at the beginning. And then after another 5,730-ish years, you'll be left with half again, and so forth. In theory, you could use this to work back to when the thing died. Okay, so what's the problem? The problem is that carbon-14 production is not a constant. There are a variety of factors that affect how much carbon-14 is produced. One of these factors is the strength of the Earth's magnetic field, which we know is weakening over time. What this means is that for radiocarbon dating to be accurate, we need to know how much carbon-14 the organism had when it died. But we can't know that for certain, because how much carbon-14 the thing had when it died depends on when it died, which is what we're trying to figure out in the first place. This is what's called a catch-22. The information that we're trying to get is essential to have in order to get the information that we're trying to get. People like to point out that people like me are operating off of faith, that we're trusting that people we've never met were telling the truth when they wrote this book. And to that I say, yes, there is a lot of faith to it. Faith backed by evidence. But something those same people don't stop to consider is where they got their ideas. Have you done the research yourself? Or did you just read a book written by someone you've never met that you assume is telling the truth? Until next time, I'm Akelian, because someone has to be.